Well, I'll just ask you then. How are things here?
You sure you don't want to give me a broader question that I could negotiate around? How are things here? We've been answering that question for 5 years. The dynamics change, but we get asked that a lot. You figure you'd have a pat answer. Things here are good. Are good. I think if you put it in its simple dynamics, you know how people make a list if they're deciding to move or deciding to take a new job or deciding whether to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and they make the list. Reasons, good and bad. The good, I think, far outnumbers the bad now. You know, we got the new mayor. That's good. We have the new police chief. We have. I'm not an expert on some of these issues, but I think the record would stand that the schools are better. The roads are getting there. Uh, there's more environmental advocacy. There is more enlightened ecological and urban planning, building, architecture. It's a changed place. It's a smarter place. We've all had to learn a lot over the last 5 years between first Katrina, learning hydraulics and plate tectonics and more of the stuff that you ever have to know about where you live. And then with BP to follow it, get some smart people around here. Your average average barfly knows more about physics and petroleum withdrawal than a lot of people who work for the companies. So in that regard, it's good. The Saints, of course, you hear about it all the time. I know that's frivolous, but I think you've probably heard the story enough. It really it's such a perfect metaphor for New Orleans, the Saints. I mean, just really being the lousiest sports franchise, not just in football, but in all of professional sports for so long. And for them suddenly to turn the corner, you know, and to have them, they're great ambassadors for us. We kind of felt like over the last couple of years that big L that's been on our forehead was finally removed. And all those dynamics at work, like I said, with the new government, and I think people are doing, I think people would be just really jumping up and down right now. I remember Mayor Nagin, Ray Nagin, the first anniversary of Katrina, floated this idea that we should note the occasion with a parade, a masquerade ball, and a comedy festival. Now, that one flatlined in the Chocolate City and the Vanilla City. Nobody quite got where that was coming from. The wounds were fresh. The city was stained and dirty, and people were hurting. But I think if somebody floated that idea right now, it would go over. I think we look around this town right now, and I think it's easy to celebrate how far we've come and what we've got accomplished. So, not that we're going to have that comedy festival and the masquerade ball, but I don't think it sounds so crazy. And the only thing that is keeping this place really from, I think, while all the national media here is too, I think we'd really be putting on a display of the great frivolity, joy, and libertine ways that we possess, is the BP thing. Really, really threw us a curveball, just when we were there. You know, the whole package was complete. We just had the new election, the new police chief, the Super Bowl, the roads are being paved, billions of dollars in construction and everywhere. And then they threw this at us. And why it is that New Orleans and the surrounding region has to be the proving ground and the testing ground for America's great homicidal engineering disasters is beyond me. But apparently, we're the ones that are resilient enough to take. So
From the failure of the levees and that whole system 5 years ago
and
to the failure of a deep water drilling.
yeah, you know, bring the untested engineering down here to South Louisiana. Give it a fly. We'll see if it works. And of course, the first time it's ever tested, it fails. That's what I tell people about. What about the new levees? How are they? I go, Well, I don't know. We thought the last ones were good. They were there for 35 years. The first time they were tested, they failed. So how are these? Perfect. So far, we haven't been tested. But I think, here's another way I think that I've described to other people who seem lost, who try to look around and go, I don't know if it's better. You get used to seeing them, things that are missing, things that are new. And when you live here day to day, you forget that maybe where you're sitting right here, not the case. We'd be up to our knees, but a lot of places you're sitting in a restaurant, out on a sidewalk cafe, and you look around and you realize that you'd be underwater, completely submerged 5 years ago right now. And people forget. The way I tell them, really the best way to remember this is to do the disaster tour. Remember, the disaster tours were big business here. And we all learned how to do them. When our friends and our family and people came down, we all developed our shtick, our places that we took people on the disaster tour. And now I've told people, if you're confused, retrace the steps of your old disaster tour, because we don't give them as much anymore. Most everybody's seen it, I guess, by now. But if you retrace the old steps where you used to take people to just suck the life out of them and let them know what happened here, you look around and it's, in a lot of places, hard to find the manifestations of it. Now, sure, you go down the lower Ninth Ward and places in Gentilly, and you're going to find the pockets, to be sure. There are still places that are hurting. I think the community at large is thriving, it's doing great. There are many still individual and smaller stories that could rip your heart out. But hey,
Hang on,
what,
hold that
what
thought.
are you jumping like that for? I thought you lived in New York. I know when it's a jump, we'll never hear that. Nobody honks their horn here. They just hit each other.
Well, that was about what was going to happen. You could hear that little.
Yeah,
All right, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Let the fighter. What the fuck are fighter jets flying around here for? I mean, all day today.
Are they?
Yeah.
Faxing for the president
Yeah. Is he coming down?
Sunday.
He is?
Just got our itinerary.
That's a
Oh
bummer.
boy, stay off the interstate. Such a pain in the ass. We have a naval base just south of here.
When we first met, not long after the storm, I'm trying to get it, because we were here a lot, and then we were here less, and then the only time I've been here now is to have fun or to, go chase the oil spill.
Right.
So, I haven't been looking at this place as hard as I used to. You've been here through that whole arc, and as bad as it was 5 years ago, do you feel like the city is as far along as you'd hoped, or as far along as it could be? Or I guess what I'm hearing you say is, all things considered, everything that's gone on in the last 5 years, things aren't so bad here.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not. Well, here's another thing that really ticked me off about this BP thing, is that we had completely disposed and dispensed with the whole victimology. Nobody needed anything anymore from outside folks. We were fine, a self-contained community working on our own. Then, of course, this comes, and the fishing communities and all that kind of stuff. People need help again and got their hands out. People cutting checks, and that really angers me, to put us back in that position, to put people in this community back in that position, because nobody wants to ask for money and ask for stuff. But yeah, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have guessed we'd be anywhere near this far along. I think what you've got here basically is I guess the phrase is the new Orleans. I mean, this is it. In the beginning, you guys used to come down weekly, then monthly, then yearly, and now you're here for 5, and we won't see y'all till 10. But I think this is it. This is New Orleans. I think with rare exceptions, everyone wants to be back here, is back here. The businesses that were, it's 5 years. If you wanted to reopen your restaurant, you've done so, and otherwise you've chosen not to or moving on. So this is it. It's a fully thriving and functioning city. We're not all beat down. Life functions, I want to put quotations on it, normally here, normal in the way that New Orleans can be normal. But we're thriving, we're rolling, we're unafflicted. This is it. Sometimes you could look around and say, oh my God, it's in shambles. But, this is what our streets and houses look like before the storm. Don't be fooled. You can get to a lot of places that really look like, oh, they never came and fixed this block. But it looked like that before. That better be the president. Do you need anything?
Call you right back.
You good?
Call you right back.
Boy, I'm glad that didn't happen to me.
Shit. I've been putting this thing on silent all day until this minute. Did I get the end of that thought?
Well, that didn't happen while you were saying something profound
I know.
and brilliant.
No, because you were hitting the ball out of the park there.
You did talk twice about how the city really is, in a lot of ways, in shambles pre-storm. This is just the way it looks. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, where do you want me to pick up there? What?
Well, it's interesting because I used
I'll tell you
to.
a great anecdote about it.
Please.
Well, the state of the city, and people come and look around. At this point, you've had to have seen it before. I've always likened the Katrina and its aftermath to the Grand Canyon and Graceland. And it's a matter of, if you have not witnessed, it doesn't matter how many photographs you've seen and what people have told you, unless you witnessed it with your own eyes, you'll never know. You'll never understand. You guys were here. You understand. You saw it. But I can no more explain what it was like here 4 or 5 years ago any more than I could tell you the mysteries of the cosmos. But the funny thing is, if you had never been here before and you could come down and you might see some areas that are shambles, well, that's because the city's 300 years old. That's not necessarily because of the storm and the degradation brought by the federal levee failure. But there was a friend of mine very early on. They'd come in from a New York newspaper to cover it. And the one guy had lived here for many, many years. So they sent him, all the guys who used to work in the media, now at other outlets, all got sent here to cover the storm because they knew their way around. And they'd bring all the other people with them. And he had the photographer, and they'd go out in the streets. They'd gone into the French Quarter from the airport with their rented cars. The French Quarter was one of the first places up and running. It's old ground, so it's high ground. And they got in the car and he began driving, and he was 6-7 blocks out of the French Quarter into a little neighborhood called the Bywater. And the photographer was jumping out saying, "Oh my God, slow it down," and snapping pictures. I can't believe it. And my friend turned to him and said, "This part didn't flood. We're not at the damage yet." And so, it can be very beguiling in that fashion, where you look at things sometimes and you go, is that from the storm, or is that just because it's really old and the landlord lives in Miami? Who knows?
Yeah.
But, yeah, let me ask you.
Yeah.
Don't you feel it? I think we're there. I think this is it. Because you asked that, and suddenly I'm thinking there should be more now. You're right, we're 5 years in. Okay, what next? Well, there's some money coming in, federal money, rebuilding money. There's a lot of projects, drainage, the levees, that are going to be long-term, and that will continue. But I think the rest of it, that's it. This is, this is what you get. This is what we look like now.
Does it sound crazy, but did New Orleans, as horrible as all of that stuff was 5 years ago, you look at all that rebuilding, all that infrastructure money that has gone in, you look at a new school system that's going to get more than $1 billion now, all these charter schools, all this other stuff. I mean, in its own way, New Orleans was slowly dying before. You lost 100,000 people, you lost lives here. There was a misery index that was off the charts. But maybe this cataclysm, in its own bizarre way, helped save the place. Is that possible?
Well, yeah, of course. You heard that a lot in the beginning, in both positive and insidious fashions. Of course, the great fiery evangelicals were always turned on by the fact that Katrina is a Greek term for cleansing. So they liked the idea that God was sending his flares down to warn us about our libertine ways, which is always kind of strange that. And this is one thing that's always disturbed me, that there's this sort of notion that runs through middle America that what happened in New Orleans with Katrina, that New Orleans sort of deserved to get its ass kicked. But when a community in Iowa floods, that's generally assigned to tough luck and bad weather, and there's always been that stigma associated with it. But yeah, a lot of people said at the time, this is the best thing that could happen in New Orleans. And that was a dangerous thing to say at the time. Now, 5 years later, you can look back and say, we're the only community ever that's really gotten a civic do-over. Really, almost every institution, everything, every institution, every place, everything, every person, not only was given the opportunity to start over, but had to. And I've always thought, and I'm running disconnected threads here together for you, but Katrina, one thing that it did that imbued all of us with a great sense of community and feel goodness is that Katrina sparked the nation's largest volunteerism effort in American history and the largest charitable giving in American history. And we've had not tens of thousands, we've had hundreds of thousands of people come down here and pick up a hammer and nails and help us put it back together. We don't know who they are. We don't know how to thank them. They came on yellow buses and left on yellow buses, and we all would like to somehow send them cookies or something. And I always thought, really, the only way to thank them is to not screw it up, is to make a better place than we had before. So you look back at 5 years and you answer that question, did we waste their time and their money? Or did we put it to good use? I think we put it to good use. I think in the balances, still a couple of places where we got it all wrong. The teenagers with guns thing. I don't know. Nothing changed. Might even be worse. Who knows?
Gangs.
Yeah. But almost everything else just seems better. We have some hospital issues. We still got issues. The big things. Levees, hospitals. It's not a restaurant. It's not something you throw up in a couple of weeks. And several were destroyed downtown. So it's a very complex issue on who's going to reopen and where to rebuild, to refurbish. So some of those things are going to take a while. But the rest of it is we had a chance to do over, and in many places, we succeeded. In fact, in many places, the town looks better because it's got a fresh coat of paint and fresh landscaping, places that had lay untouched, unfixed for such a long time.
But while that may be true in terms of some of the cosmetics, in terms of the core stuff, do you think this do-over opportunity, has it gotten all the way down into the inside? Because part of what was wrong before was the sort of insidious corruption and all this other sort of stuff that helped this place rot.
Well, absolutely. I think the root of our poor political foibles, a lot of it had to do with apathy and the fact that we were tolerant of politicians who entertained us and looked the other way about everything else. Like I said, people are smarter here now in a lot of ways. And one of them is certainly there's a much greater political savviness at work here. Much more activism. people are very, very well informed in this town. I'm no longer at the Times-Picayune, but would still state that it is still the most relevant local newspaper in the country. And that in this community, if you're not reading it and listening to the news, well, no, let me go back. Everybody in this town is reading the paper, is listening to the radio, and is watching the news. People fell very far behind when they weren't paying attention. We had a lot of forms to fill out for a long time. We had to learn a lot of things really fast. And it was inevitable that then the population would become much more informed politically and socially, much more savvy, less inclined to put up with BS. And so again, you know, another great manifestation of it. This is not something I would have told you before Hurricane Katrina, but I think you have one of the smarter communities here in New Orleans. Now, we've always known our literature and our culture and such, but I think, you know, if you put New Orleans up against any other community in a game of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, I think we could win. People are smarter here. They're dialed in. They're tuned in. They have to be. If you didn't dial into what was going on, you lost everything. So pay attention just to keep your property and your job and everything else around here for a long time.
Yeah. They're all right. They're all right. It's all right. It's all right. I think I'm in pretty good shape here.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
But I'll tell you the great example. I'll tell you where the brightest spot is the kids here. You know, this one over here, the others I have inside, the others in this neighborhood. The children of New Orleans have been through extraordinary experiences in their lifetime and have known senses of deprivation, fear, humility, and gratitude that other communities only learn in school and at home at the dinner table. It became a way of life here, a culture. There was nobody who didn't need help. Didn't matter how rich you were. If your house is under 9 feet of water and you don't have any cars to get out of town, you're going to need somebody to help you, all the way down at the bottom. And what my children learned, and so many others, when they had to go to other towns to live for a long time, with nothing, you know, the famous story, everybody left with 2 days worth of stuff. And we arrived in other communities to find boxes of clothes. My own instance, my kids were not poor. We're not rich. We're middle class. But my kids wound up in Maryland with really nothing going on with them. Nothing to wear, no books, no toys. They just got on a plane a couple days after it, first one that we could get out of here. They left, and I went to work, and over the course of the weeks, I walk outside one morning, and there's 3 bicycles in the front yard. Come out another day, there's boxes of clothes, unsigned, nobody knows where it's from, but people just heard that there were Katrina kids in the neighborhood. Now, we don't need canned food at Thanksgiving and at Christmas, but at that time, we did. And so our kids have been through that. They understand the senses of loss. They've lost so much. They get told no more than people in other communities, because either what it is they want to do or who it is they want to see ain't here. And I guess my long-winded way of saying that's the great building block that we've got here, is that not only the adults smarter and savvier, but I think our kids have something special going on here, what they've been through. Maybe it's a lot like kids who went through war zones,
Depression.
in World War II,
Yeah.
the Depression. Exactly. But here, just an isolated place. I guess it'd be a test. It'd be interesting to check your college scores in 11 years and go to Cornell University and see if you can pick out the New Orleans kids just by how smart they are. But they had to grow up fast, and they learned a lot. The kids here know a lot of stuff.
Interesting.
both factually speaking and through a full emotional range that a lot of other folks haven't been through.
Yeah, I hear that.